Hear these words contained in John's Gospel, the 21st chapter, verses 15 through 17. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." There's a lot contained in these 3 verses, but let me set the stage. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, James, and John, and 2 other disciples were hanging out when Simon Peter announces, "I'm going fishing," and the others agreed to come along. That night, they didn't catch any fish. Early in the morning, Jesus stands on the shore and calls out to the disciples to throw their net on the right side of the boat, and they caught a huge number of fish. John, the disciple Jesus loved, says to Peter, "It's the Lord," causing Peter to jump into the water and wade, swim to shore, while the rest of the disciples bring the boat and the fish to shore. When they arrive, they find that Jesus already has a fire going and a few fish are cooking. He calls them to bring a few more fish, and together they have breakfast. You can picture Jesus taking bread, breaking it, and giving it to them, and then doing the same with the fish. After they eat, Jesus pulls Simon Peter aside for the conversation recorded in the 3 verses you heard today. Before we get to those, let me make one important comment about this stage that I've set. It's my contention, and it's always been my contention, that part of the reason they didn't catch any fish during the night is that they were trying to go back to the old ways. Fishing was something they knew, it was comfortable, and it wasn't what Jesus has called them to do. In fact, this is exactly what Jesus called them away from. Now, I said it my first Sunday we were back at our in-person worship, that we don't really want to return to what's comfortable and familiar at this time. We don't want to return to merely existing. We don't want to return to normal. Author Sonia Renee Taylor recently put it this way: "We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was never normal, other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all humanity and nature." And so I now have 2 contentions around this passage: that they were trying to go back to their old ways, and that verses 15 through 17 of this 21st chapter of John are an invitation to create a new life that is truly worth living. And this new life, based on John 21, looks like this. We are a people who care for youngsters. Jesus looks at Peter and says, "Feed my lambs." And there are 2 ways that you can look at this. We can look at people who are young in age and people who are young in their relationship with Jesus. Let me first say a few things about those who are young in age. The 2019 America's Children Report, which uses information from 2017 and 2018, made the following statistical observations. There were 73.4 million children in 2018, and about 12.8 million lived in poverty. It comes as no surprise then that roughly the same number lived in households that were classified as food insecure. Binge drinking of alcohol declined among 12th graders, but 14% still participated. And 24% of that same group of people reported illegal drug use. Nearly 13% of those ages 12 to 17 had a major depressive episode during a 12-month period. And over 40% of our youth are receiving treatment for depression. Now, there is good news in the report, but I highlight those statistics to say that there is room and a place for the church to be involved in caring about the most vulnerable in our society. Then there are those who are young in their faith. I'm defining this as folks who are new to their faith. This could be children or adults. But let me simply ask those of us who are seasoned church attenders, how are we, or better yet, are we reaching out to those who are new to faith in Christ? Are we introducing others to Jesus? Are we walking alongside them? Are we feeding them? And if we are feeding them, are we helping them move from easily digested food to the more difficult adult food? But Jesus didn't stop with "feed my lambs." He asks Peter a second time, "Do you love me?" And when Peter responds in the affirmative a second time, he says, "Take care of my sheep." Now, this is more than simply feeding them. This implies there is much work to be done as we take care of his sheep. It's about being involved in multiple aspects of a person's life, multiple aspects of a community. In other words, the separation of church and state is only valid from the state's point of view. Our participation in the life of our church, our community, our state, our country, and our world must be impacted by our relationship with Jesus, if we are to take care of the sheep. But what does taking care of human sheep look like? There are avenues of hospitality that we must embrace, discovering new ways of caring for others. This past week, Becky Curtis and I sat down with some folks from Montpelier to see if there were ways we could partner together for mission and ministry. We're looking at two possible avenues: a working partnership with Camp Widewater, our closest United Methodist Retreat Center, where we could provide some volunteer assistance for maintenance and other projects at the facility, and the creation of a devotional written by the pastors and members of our three churches. Staying with the idea of caring for others for one more moment, I have easy homework for you. As you leave today, take a quick drive around Eden and pay attention on your way home. Look at our community and write down what you see, and answer these two questions. What needs do I see? And how can the church respond? And then send me your answers to those two questions. And let me simply say that the visible needs are simply the tip of the iceberg. And finally, Jesus looks at Peter and asks a third time, "Do you love me?" And Peter replies, "Lord, you know all things. You know I love you." "Feed my sheep," says Jesus. I will confess that I hear that final question on a very personal level. For me, this third question is primarily directed at clergy, and it's a call to feed, teach, and nurture the spiritual life of a congregation so that they grow and live out their faith. However, that does not mean it is exclusively my question. It's a question for the church as well. A question about our education programs for children, youth, and adults. It's a call to start where we are and become better. Now, I realize that COVID-19 has put a damper on our education programming, but it also allows us to plan new things that meet our current and future needs. So let me summarize these past few sermons. Jesus has called us to be different because of our relationship with him. We've been called to go and make disciples, people radically committed to Jesus, who love one another and care about one another because we have been loved by God and called to be family in the largest sense of the word. Let's go live as if we truly are family. Thanks be to God. Amen.